So I always like to start with brows, because brows frame the face, and then I go into eyes right after. So I'm going to use the Master Blade Brow Pencil. This is in the shade Classic Brunette, and I go quite natural with the brows, which I'll show you. I'm not going to spend too much time on them, but I always keep this area here very, very natural, because I want to see all the hairs, and even I want to see even a little skin through there. And I'm going to be focusing on from here on out, because I want to lift and elongate the brows. I'm going to be using very gentle pressure, so I'm not putting too much pressure, because again, I want it to look as natural as possible. And once you do the brows and the brows come out really nice, it can also help to dictate the rest of the makeup. Sometimes, you need less eye makeup if you have a really nice, beautiful, natural brow. So I'm going to now extend the brow a little bit outside of her natural brow, and that's going to give just that little bit of lift. So just blending it in. And then the general rules for brows for me are the reason that I don't go too dark on the inner corners, because it can appear super harsh, and also sometimes it can bring the eyes closer together, and it kind of gives like an angry look. So next I'm going to start on the eyes before we do any skin. Let's start with the pencils. Where are the pencils? I'm going to probably do brown and black, but I always start with lining on the inside of the eye, so the inner rim, tight lining. So now I can go a little bit above, line into the roots of the lashes on the outer and center, and then now that because she has no complexion on now, so it'll be very easy to shape clean it off with a Q-tip, shape it. So now I'm gonna use a Q-tip and just clean up underneath a bit and get that desired shape. I'm just blending this into the lid. So I'm gonna go right into that corner there. I like to apply a little bit more into this corner because it really shapes the eye beautifully. And then the tear duct as well in here. It elongates the eye sort of horizontally and gives it that beautiful almond shape. So I definitely like to get in there with the liner as well. So now that we've done this liner, this also helps you to sort of not use as much eyeshadows, because you're getting the definition now step by step, and so you can go with a softer approach to eyeshadows as well. I'm going to take shade 8, my favorite. Maybe I'll mix a little bit of 7, 4. So I'm going to go just with a soft, sort of softly sculpted lid. I don't want to do much of a crease look. I'm just going to kind of go with a pulled out, softly enhanced and smoked lid. Definitely focusing on pulling up and out. And look straight, open. And then as I'm going out, I want to soften it, make sure it's not as dark towards the outers. That's why it's always good. I mean, my whole thing is I definitely like to work in light, thin layers for all of the face, including the eyes, because it's just much easier that way. You just take a step back, you do a little bit, take a step back, you gauge, if you need more. But definitely it's always easier to add than it is to remove, and you save on time that way, I think, as well. So I'm just buffing it now with a little bit of the loose powder again. And I'm going to add just some neutral shadow in here too, but I'm going to wait until I do some complexion, because I want it to grip onto the complexion. And I'm going to add sort of a... So I'm going to take now this is another one of my favorites, the E6. It's a double-sided brush. I'm going to take the flat side here. So I'm going to now take just the highest point of the brow and just press a little bit of this highlight in there. So just on the highest part. It affects the shape depending on where you apply this highlight. So if I take this and I bring it all the way down, this will now bring the eyebrow and the eye down. So that's why I'm keeping it only here, because I want to keep that brown over here. Okay. And open. Well, you can if you're doing a dramatic look, you can definitely use the dark. And then the shape here. So like now, I don't have to be as delicate when I'm working on the eyes, because I've done the wet liner part already. And then also, I typically will also add liner later. Once we're done, I'll kind of go in and add a little bit more. Okay, so I'm going to take now this shade here, shade number 6 in the neutrals palette. This is a little bit more neutral. And I'm going to go into this area here. And let's see, we'll do a little bit of shade 2 right in here. Okay, take a little bit of that shade 1 of the powder, just go over. Okay, so I'm going to probably start to move on from the eyes now and go back to them a little bit later. I'm going to start working on complexion on. Does she have moisturizer on or no? She does? Okay. Let me just have a little bit for the under eye. Which one is that? Amber Release? Okay. Here, let me see this one. Okay, so she already has moisturizer on here. I'm just going to wipe it off around the eyes, so I'm going to apply a little bit more. This is just one of those little, one of the cheap sponges, the wedges. Yeah, I usually just do moisturizer, nice emollient moisturizer. I like to keep it simple. Yes, this one is the Amber Release. I also use the Augustinus Batter. If someone has dry skin, I'll use the Rich Cream. If someone has less dry skin, I'll use the regular cream or the Amber Release if I don't want too heavy of a moisturizer. Hi, sorry, I can't hear you. Yes, I would recommend an oily moisturizer. So that, when you use powder, it really grips onto it beautifully. So yeah, I use the same moisturizer regardless of the skin is oily or not. Actually, I prefer oily skin because the more oily the skin and the more